We can all get ourselves to that stage where we feel like we've hit rock bottom, like nothing else can go wrong that's worse than what's already happening. And yes, we do get ourselves there usually. Most commonly, it starts with this tiny, small thought in your head that spirals out of control, and before you know it, you're in the depth of despair. You're in the pits of hopelessness. Nothing looks like it's worth it, and your life might seem pointless. Perhaps the most important point to recognize here is that this is not you. This is a state of mind that you have got yourself to, which is telling you things that you know rationally aren't true. Even if there's a little bit of truth to them, they've been magnified out of all proportion, exaggerated to a ridiculous extreme. We can think about this like a storm. If you were on a long walk and you started to feel drops of rain hitting your face, and you tell yourself it's typical, the one day you wanted a nice walk in the sunshine, and of course it's begun to rain. As what generally happens in these situations, the more annoyed you get about the rain, the more it starts to pour, heavier and heavier. It's gone from being quite an insignificant drizzle to suddenly drops pouring down your hair and getting into your clothes, soaking you through to the skin. And then the thunder begins. Huge claps of thunder, where fear sets in, and lightning bolts rage through the sky. It's anger, it's fright, it's sadness, it's everything all at once. The wind starts to blow and the mist starts to gather, and you can't see anything through all of this wind and weather. You're lost and you're trapped in this new, very different reality to the one you set out to find at the beginning of the day. We all know that the world is not like this constantly. Storms come every now and then, sometimes devastating storms, sometimes the kind of storms that tear communities apart, which rip hearts into shreds, and which leave ruined wrecks in a million pieces, and people wondering how they're ever going to be able to put themselves back together again. This is how we feel when we hit rock bottom. What could be worse than this? We all know that this doesn't last. Storms don't last forever. And especially not the extreme of the storms that we're going through right at this very moment. Some people say they don't mind the rain, that it's quite refreshing in a way, and it's a change from the norm. I think it would be hard pushed to really make yourself like a storm where you feel like you're being attacked from the inside out. But sometimes we just need to survive it. Acknowledge the experience. Let it happen around you, but don't fall into the trap of thinking that this is your life now, because it isn't. Far from it. You've just got to get through this crazy emotional tornado and be a survivor. Come out on the other side of it and say, it might still be pretty bleak, pretty grey, pretty cold, and pretty rainy, but I can cope with that. Because we must live in hope that one day the sun will shine. One day we'll live in a brighter world where these will be our experiences that we recount to people with wiser eyes, with a new outlook on them, to know that they weren't everlasting, they were only temporary. Your emotions have this sneaky trick of trying to make you believe that this really is it when you're in the storm. And that maybe even if you try to get yourself out of it, you're just pretending. But there's nothing wrong with pretending. If we just stood in the storm and refused to move, the chances are that we're going to suffer more and more. But if we keep going, maybe over there, it isn't pouring quite so hard. Focus ahead. Switch your train of thought. Think about anything other than what you're focusing on that's bringing you down, that's making it feel like you've hit rock bottom. And I mean, it could be anything. It doesn't matter if it's trivial. It doesn't matter if it feels so insignificant to all of your worries, because it might just flip a switch in your head. If the storm caused a flood and you were trapped in the waves, you could let yourself go with the flow and be washed away, never to be seen again, or you could fight against the tide. And it's not going to be an easy thing, because there's so many negative thoughts in your brain at this point. They're going to do a darn good job of dragging you down. But you need to swim like you've never swum before in the opposite direction. And that includes any method you can think of putting a stop to this cycle. Even if you feel like it might only be a temporary stop, at least it's going to give you a break. It's going to give you a chance to reevaluate things when you're not feeling quite so run down. We all know that we are the people that make a difference to our lives, that we can be in exactly the same situation and feel two completely different emotions about it, that the way we look at things makes all the difference. And yet when we feel like we've hit rock bottom, we don't care about any of those things. They all seem so cliché and stupid and naive and almost sickening. But the truth is, they're our lifeline. How can we reasonably envy those who are happier than us if we're not willing to fight for our own happiness? We're the only people who can make it happen for ourselves. We are constantly inspired by those who hit rock bottom and bounce right back up, who tell their stories of going from having nothing to everything they ever dreamed of. And if you're at rock bottom right now, maybe it's that opportunity to be that success story that we so admire in other people, for the people around us in our lives. When we hit rock bottom, it's hard to see a way out. It's hard to think that things could ever get better. But that's what all of those success stories are built on. Finding a way through. If our rock bottom self was right in assuming that there was no way out of this, those inspirational people would not be all around us in the world today. When you're at the end of the line, when you feel like you've got down as far as you can go, do whatever it takes to get yourself through that storm and to be able to stand on the other side. Let's face it, it's probably not going to be perfect on the other side. There's not a miracle solution to these things. But the valuable lesson there is that you've saved yourself. And if you've saved yourself once, you can save yourself 100 times. And the more you do it, the stronger you'll get. And the stronger you get, the more you'll be able to do it. When you genuinely feel like you've hit the bottom, there's nowhere lower for you to go. So why not start climbing and just see what happens? Because surely, from rock bottom, the only way has to be up.